For 16 years Saren Frostpaw had been invisible. Not forgotten, not overlooked, invisible by choice. Because to be seen as what she truly was would be to die. She had survived 16 years of silence, 16 years of shadows, and exactly one accidental touch to know that some secrets were better buried than spoken. Tonight, beneath the crimson glow of the blood moon, that secret was tearing through her carefully woven spell, and there was nothing in the realm that could stop it. The weight of the silver tray pressed against Saren's palms as she moved through the grand ballroom of Shadowspire Palace. The air was thick with incense and power, heavy with the scent of old magic and older bloodlines. She moved through the sea of nobility with practiced invisibility, head down, steps silent, breath measured. Refill the goblets. Collect the empty plates. Avoid the mirrors along the marble columns. Mirrors were dangerous. They made her look too long, made her remember the girl she used to be before she learned that survival meant erasure. Her hands trembled as she arranged the final row of crystal glasses on the ceremonial table. The blood moon coronation was reaching its peak, and the 3 Alpha Kings stood at the center of the raised dais in their formal leathers and ancient pack regalia. She had exactly 8 minutes before the oath ceremony concluded, which meant she had 8 minutes to finish her duties, retreat to the servants' quarters, and disappear into the part of the palace where royal attention didn't follow. 8 minutes to remain nobody. The ceremonial gong echoed through the hall. Saren's stomach dropped. She turned toward the servants' exit, already moving, already counting her steps. But the crowd had shifted, closing the path. Nobles pressed forward to witness the king's oath, and she was trapped in the tightening circle, too close to the dais, too visible. Just move. Dorian Stormclaw's voice rang out, deep and commanding, reciting the ancient words of sovereignty. His presence dominated the room, broad-shouldered, dark-haired, with storm-gray eyes that missed nothing. Beside him stood Kale Bloodmoon, all leonine grace and golden intensity, his amber gaze scanning the crowd with predatory awareness. And then Riker Blackfang, the quietest of the 3, his black hair falling over eyes dark as midnight, watching everything with the cold precision of a blade. Saren kept her head down and edged along the wall, tray clutched against her chest like a shield. She could feel the magic thrumming through the room, could feel the ancient power rising as the kings reached for the ceremonial blade that would seal their oath in blood. She was 3 steps from the archway when it happened. Dorian reached for the blade on the altar. The crowd surged forward. Someone jostled Saren from behind and she stumbled, the tray tilting. She caught it, but her sleeve snagged on the decorative ironwork of a torch sconce. The fabric tore with a sound like breaking glass. Dorian turned at the noise, his hand already extended for the blade. His fingers caught her wrist as she pulled away from the sconce. Skin met skin. The forbidden spell shattered. The reaction was instantaneous. Dorian froze mid-reach, his entire body going rigid. His pupils dilated, gold bleeding into the storm gray of his eyes. His nostrils flared as he inhaled sharply and his grip on her wrist tightened. Saren felt it slam into her chest, the bond raw and violent and undeniable, roaring to life like wildfire in her veins. Oh no. Kale's head snapped toward them, his body pivoting with predatory speed. His eyes locked on Saren and she watched the confusion flicker across his face, then the recognition, then something feral and possessive that made her knees weak. What? Kale's voice was rough, barely controlled. He inhaled and his entire expression shifted. Impossible. Riker moved like a shadow, closing the distance in 3 strides. His dark eyes swept over Saren with surgical precision, and when he breathed in, his jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. The ballroom had gone silent. Every eye in the room was on them. On her. On the 3 Alpha Kings frozen mid-ceremony, staring at a maid with torn sleeves and terror in her eyes. Dorian's grip on her wrist was iron. His voice came out low, dangerous, barely human. Who are you? Saren's wolf was screaming beneath her skin, howling in recognition, desperate to submit, to run, to claim. Mate. 3 voices. 3 pulls. 3 kings who should never have noticed a spell hidden Omega. Her voice cracked. She tried to pull away but Dorian didn't release her. Kale stepped closer, his hand rising as if to touch her face. Your scent, it's... He stopped, shook his head like he was trying to clear it. How is this possible? We would have known. Riker's voice was cold, analytical, but his eyes burned. All these years if you were. Let me go. Saren's whisper cut through the tension. She met Dorian's gaze for the first time in 16 years of service, and the bond surged so violently between them that she gasped. Please. Dorian's expression was unreadable, shock, hunger, confusion, all warring beneath the surface. But he didn't let go. Instead, his thumb brushed over the inside of her wrist, right where her pulse was hammering, and his voice dropped to something that felt like a vow. Not a chance. The ballroom erupted. Whispers spread like poison through the crowd. Nobles pressed closer, trying to see, to understand. The royal guard moved forward, hands on their weapons, uncertain whether to protect their kings or restrain the strange maid who had somehow disrupted the coronation. Kale's hand closed around Saren's other arm, steadying her. His scent wrapped around her, sun-warmed amber and wild honey, and her wolf whimpered. Clear the room. Riker's command cut through the chaos like a blade. His eyes never left Saren's face. Now. The guards moved immediately, ushering the protesting nobles toward the exits. But Saren could feel the damage spreading, could feel the moment her 16 years of invisibility shattered into irreparable pieces. Through the thinning crowd, she caught sight of a figure in healer's robes near the back archway. Lysandra Vale. The head healer's expression was carefully neutral, but Saren saw the flicker of calculation in her eyes, saw the way her hand moved to the pouch at her belt. She knows. She's always known. Terror flooded Saren's veins, cold and absolute. I need to go, she whispered, pulling against their hold with desperate strength. You don't understand. If they find out, if he finds out. Who? Dorian's voice was deadly quiet. Who finds out what? Saren looked up at him, at the three kings who held her fate in their hands, and felt the weight of 16 years of lies pressing down on her chest. That I'm still alive, she breathed. Before any of them could respond, the great doors of the ballroom slammed open. A royal messenger stood in the archway, his face pale, a sealed letter trembling in his hands. Your Majesties, he gasped, bowing low. Urgent word from the northern border. The Frostpaw seal. He swallowed hard. It's been broken. The temperature in the room dropped. Saren felt the blood drain from her face. 16 years. 16 years of service. The curse had been waiting, counting down, and she'd been too focused on hiding to realize the clock had finally run out. Dorian's grip on her wrist shifted, his thumb pressing against her racing pulse. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of inevitability. Tell me your name. Your real name. Saren closed her eyes. There was no more hiding. No more running. The spell was broken, the bond was awake, and the hunt was about to begin. Saren, she whispered. Saren Frostpaw. The name landed like a death sentence. Kale's breath caught. Riker went perfectly still. And Dorian's eyes flooded with gold as his wolf surged to the surface, protective and possessive and absolutely feral. Get her to the tower, he commanded, his voice rough with barely controlled power. No one touches her. No one gets near her. His eyes locked on Saren's, burning with an intensity that stole her breath. You're ours now. And we protect what's ours. Saren wanted to argue, wanted to explain that protection was impossible, that being seen would only paint a target on all of them. But the bond was howling, the curse was awake, and somewhere in the shadows of the palace, she knew Lysandra was already moving. The most dangerous night of her life had just begun. And this time there was nowhere left to hide. The palace corridors blurred past Saren in a haze of panic and torchlight. Her maid's uniform was still torn at the sleeve, the fabric hanging loose where Dorian's touch had shattered everything. Behind her, she heard the heavy footfalls, steady, relentless, closing the distance with predatory patience. Saren. Kale's voice echoed off the stone walls, rich and commanding. Stop running. She didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Her bare feet slapped against cold marble as she took a sharp turn into the east wing, away from the royal chambers, away from the ballroom where her entire world had collapsed. The mate bond pulled at her chest like a physical tether, urging her to turn back, to submit, to trust. But 16 years of survival instinct screamed louder than any bond. Lysandra's chambers were 3 corridors away. She could just reach the healer, get another dose of the masking potion, maybe she could bury this again. Maybe she could reverse what had been awakened. Kale's footsteps quickened behind her. You can't hide from this. From us. Saren pushed through a servant's door and stumbled into the narrow passage that ran behind the palace walls. The air here was stale, thick with dust and secrets. She knew these passages better than anyone. 16 years of invisibility had taught her every hidden route, every forgotten corridor. She burst through Lysandra's door without knocking, chest heaving, pulse hammering in her throat. The healer looked up from her work table, surprise flickering across her elegant features before smoothing into practiced concern. Crystal vials glinted in the candlelight, and the scent of bitter herbs hung heavy in the air. Saren. Lysandra rose gracefully, her healer's robes whispering against the floor. I heard what happened at the coronation. The entire palace is talking about. She paused, her green eyes searching Saren's face. The bond. I need more of the potion. Saren's words came out desperate, broken. The masking spell, it broke. I need you to make it stronger. I need. Saren. Lysandra's voice was soft, almost pitying. She moved to a cabinet and retrieved a small vial filled with liquid the color of midnight. What you need isn't another masking potion. What you need is freedom. Saren stared at the vial. Something about it felt wrong, the color too dark, the glass too cold. This is a severing potion, Lysandra continued, stepping closer. One dose and the mate bond will be destroyed completely. Permanently. You'll be free of them, free of the pull, free of the danger. You can disappear, start over somewhere far from here. Somewhere safe. The vial gleamed in the candlelight, promising escape. Promising the invisibility Saren had spent 16 years perfecting. But Lysandra's hand trembled slightly as she held it out, and her eyes, those green eyes that had always been kind, flickered with something that looked like urgency. Desperation even. Take it, Lysandra urged, pushing the vial into Saren's hand. Before they find you. Before it's too late. Saren's fingers closed around the glass, feeling its unnatural coldness seep into her skin. Her wolf recoiled violently, snarling in rejection. The bond in her chest thrummed with warning, and beneath the bitter herbs in the air she caught something else. Something metallic and wrong. Why are you so eager for me to take this? Saren's voice came out quiet, dangerous. Lysandra's smile faltered for just a heartbeat. Because I'm your friend. Because I've kept your secret all these years. Because. The door exploded inward. Kale filled the doorway, his chest heaving, eyes blazing gold. His gaze locked on the vial in Saren's hand, and his expression twisted into something feral. Don't. His voice was pure command, pure alpha. Don't you dare. Saren's hand trembled. The vial felt like poison against her palm. She looked at Lysandra, saw the mask slip for just a moment. Saw calculations, saw cold ambition beneath the concern. She dropped the vial. It shattered against the stone floor, the dark liquid hissing and eating into the rock like acid. Lysandra's expression went blank. Then cold. You stupid girl. You have no idea what you've just refused. Saren was already moving. She dove past Kale, back into the corridor, back into the servants' passages where shadows could still hide her. Behind her she heard Kale's growl, heard Lysandra's sharp intake of breath. But she was running again, running from the bond, running from the healer's betrayal, running from the truth that was clawing its way to the surface with every desperate heartbeat. The hunt had begun. Saren made it 3 corridors before a hand closed around her arm and spun her into an alcove. She gasped, instinct screaming to fight, but the scent hit her first. Frost and iron, cold and absolute. Riker. His dark eyes pinned her in place, one hand braced against the stone wall beside her head. Unlike Kale's burning intensity or Dorian's commanding presence, Riker was ice, controlled, lethal, and utterly focused. Lysandra Vale has been selling information to rival packs for 3 years, he said without preamble, his voice low and precise. She's the one who hired the rogues that attacked the northern border last winter. She's the one who's been weakening the palace wards. His jaw tightened. And she's the one who's been keeping you hidden, not to protect you but to control when you'd be discovered. Saren's breath caught. How do you? Because I've been tracking a spy in this palace for months, and tonight when you dropped that vial I finally had my proof. His thumb brushed her cheek, the gesture achingly gentle despite the hardness in his eyes. You're not safe here. You're not safe anywhere until we... A distant crash echoed through the corridor. Glass shattering. A muffled shout cut short. Riker's entire body went rigid. Your quarters. Now. They ran together through the passages, Riker's hand locked around hers, pulling her faster than her exhausted legs wanted to move. When they reached the servant's wing, he pushed her behind him, his body a shield as they approached her door. It hung open, swaying slightly on broken hinges. Stay here, Riker commanded, but Saren was already looking past him into the small room that had been her sanctuary for 16 years. Four figures dressed in black moved like smoke through the darkness, their faces covered, their movements unnaturally silent. Silver glinted in their hands, blades curved and cruel designed for one purpose. Omega killers. Saren's wolf howled in recognition and terror. She stumbled backward and one of the assassin's heads snapped toward the movement. He raised his blade. Riker shifted. The transformation was instantaneous. Bones cracking, muscles rippling, dark fur exploding across his skin. His wolf was massive, black as midnight with eyes that burned like coals. He hit the first assassin with the force of a battering ram, jaws closing around the man's throat before he could scream. The door behind them exploded outward. Two more wolves burst into the narrow corridor, one storm gray with silver-tipped fur, the other golden and leonine. Dorian and Kale, their wolves moving with the brutal coordination of alphas who'd fought together their entire lives. The small room became a battlefield. Kale's wolf tore into an assassin who'd lunged for Saren, his jaws crushing the man's wrist and sending the silver blade skittering across the floor. Dorian's wolf pinned another against the wall, snarling with such savage intensity that the assassin dropped his weapon and tried to flee. Riker moved like death itself, efficient and merciless, taking down the fourth before the man could reach the window. It was over in less than a minute. 3 assassins lay dead or dying. The fourth had escaped through the window, leaving a trail of blood across the sill. The wolves stood amid the carnage, their fur matted with blood, their breathing heavy and synchronized. Then they shifted back. Dorian stood first, naked and blood-splattered, his storm-gray eyes finding Saren where she'd pressed herself against the corridor wall. He crossed to her in 2 strides, his hands framing her face with surprising gentleness. "You're coming with us," he said, his voice rough from the shift. "No arguments. No running. The tower has wards that even Lysandra can't break, and until we root out every last conspirator, you don't leave our sight." "They were sent to kill me." Saren's voice shook, her eyes on the silver blades scattered across her floor. "Someone paid them to." "We know." Kale's voice came from behind her and she felt his hand settle on her shoulder, warm and steady. "Which is why you're under royal protection now. Binding. Anyone who touches you answers to us." Riker appeared with 3 royal guard cloaks, tossing them to his brothers before wrapping the third around Saren's trembling shoulders. His dark eyes met hers with absolute certainty. "You're ours to protect," he said simply. "And we don't fail." Saren looked at the 3 Alpha Kings standing in the wreckage of her quarters, blood-stained and feral and utterly unshakable. The bond thrummed between them, no longer a threat but a promise. She was out of places to run. And for the first time in 16 years she wasn't sure she wanted to. The royal tower was everything Saren's servants' quarters were not. Vast windows overlooking the kingdom, tapestries woven with gold thread, a bed large enough for 3 people. It was beautiful. It was a cage. She stood at the window, watching dawn paint the sky in shades of blood and amber, aware of Riker's presence behind her like a blade pressed to her spine. He'd been silent for nearly an hour, simply watching her with those calculating dark eyes, waiting for something she couldn't name. "Tell me why Lysandra wanted you dead," he said finally, his voice quiet but absolute. "Tell me why assassins with Omega-killing blades came for a maid who shouldn't matter to anyone." Saren's fingers tightened on the windowsill. "I already told you. You've told us nothing." Riker moved closer and she felt the heat of him at her back. "You've given us a name, Frostpaw, that should have died 16 years ago when Aldrich's compound burned. You've spent 16 years hiding in plain sight, using a masking spell so forbidden that most wolves don't even know it exists. And tonight, someone tried very hard to make sure you never lived to see morning." His hand closed gently around her wrist, turning her to face him. "So I'll ask you again. Who are you?" The truth sat like ash on Saren's tongue. She kept it buried for so long that speaking it felt like tearing open an old wound. "I'm his daughter," she whispered. "Aldrich Frostpaw was my father." Riker's expression didn't change, but she felt the tension coil through his body. The tyrant who slaughtered 3 packs and tried to claim the throne through blood magic. The monster who cursed his own daughter to be a weapon. Saren's voice cracked. "I was 6 when he placed the soul chain binding on me. 6 when he told me that when I came of age whoever claimed me would inherit everything he'd built. His territories, his power, his magic. He made me into bait, into a prize for ambitious alphas to fight over. And your mother? Dead. Killed by my father when she tried to stop him from completing the curse." Saren closed her eyes against the memory. "When his compound burned, everyone assumed I'd died too. I made sure they thought that. I ran here to the one place no one would think to look for Aldrich Frostpaw's daughter, serving the kings who helped destroy him." The door opened. Kale stood in the entrance, his amber eyes moving between them with sharp awareness. "Dorian's dealing with the council. They're demanding answers about last night." His gaze settled on Saren. "They want to know what you are." "A ghost," Saren said bitterly. "A weapon. A curse." Kale crossed the room with leonine grace, stopping close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Show me." "What?" "The masking spell. Riker told me what it costs to maintain one for 16 years. His hand reached for the collar of her borrowed tunic. "Show me what you've been paying." Saren's breath caught. Her hands moved to stop him, but the bond pulsed with something that felt like trust, like safety. Slowly she pulled the fabric aside, exposing her shoulder and collarbone. The burn scars were extensive, geometric patterns seared into her skin where the forbidden runes had been carved and recarved year after year to maintain the spell. They spread from her shoulder down across her ribs, silver white against her flesh, a map of 16 years of pain. Kale's jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. His fingers hovered over the scars, not quite touching. "You did this to yourself?" "Every year on the anniversary of my father's death. It was the only way to keep the spell strong enough to hide my scent, my nature, everything that would mark me as Aldrich's daughter." Saren's voice was barely audible. "Pain is the price of invisibility." Kale's hand finally settled against the scars, his palm warm and gentle. The bond flared between them and she felt something she hadn't allowed herself in 16 years. The possibility of being seen and not destroyed. "You're not hiding anymore," Kale said softly, his amber eyes burning with fierce protectiveness. "And you're not paying that price ever again." Riker stepped closer, bracketing her between them. "The council will come for answers. And when they learn who your father was, they'll want me dead," Saren finished. "Just like Lysandra did. Just like everyone will." "No." Riker's voice was absolute. "They'll have to go through us first." The royal court chamber was built to inspire fear. Vaulted ceilings that swallowed sound, stone columns carved with the names of ancient packs, and a semicircle of high-backed chairs where the Council of Elders sat in judgment. Saren stood in the center of the cold marble floor, feeling the weight of 100 eyes dissecting her, condemning her before a single word was spoken. Dorian, Kale, and Riker stood to her right, a wall of solidarity that did nothing to calm the rising panic in her chest. The mate bond thrummed between them, offering comfort she couldn't accept. "Not here. Not now." Elder Cashin, his silver hair pulled back severely, raised one gnarled hand for silence. "Bring forth the accuser." The doors opened, and Lysandra Vale glided into the chamber with the practiced grace of someone who knew exactly how powerful she appeared. Her healer's robes were pristine white, her expression one of sorrowful duty. In her hands she carried a leather folder bound with official seals. "Your honors," Lysandra began, her voice carrying perfectly through the vast space. 16 years ago I made a grave mistake. I allowed compassion to cloud my judgment, and in doing so, I endangered this entire kingdom." She placed the folder on the council's table, and Elder Cashin's hands trembled slightly as he opened it. His face went ash pale. "What is this?" His voice was barely controlled. "Proof," Lysandra said, turning to face Saren with eyes that held no trace of the kindness that had once existed between them. "Saren Frostpaw is not merely the tyrant's daughter. She is his chosen vessel. These documents, signed by Aldrich himself and witnessed by 3 blood mages, detail the inheritance curse he placed upon her before his death. Murmurs rippled through the chamber like spreading poison. According to these contracts, Lysandra continued, her voice rising with righteous conviction, Saren was planted in this palace 16 years ago with a single purpose: to wait until she came of age to seduce those in power, and to activate the curse that would transfer her father's territories and dark magic directly to her, making her the most powerful alpha in the realm. That's a lie. Dorian's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. He stepped forward, fury radiating from every line of his body. Saren was a child when she came here. She's been a servant, invisible, powerless. Exactly as her father designed. Lysandra's smile was poisonous. What better way to hide a weapon than to make it appear harmless? She's been biding her time, waiting for the curse to mature. And last night, during the blood moon, the most magically potent night of the year, she triggered the mate bond with all three kings. She turned to the council. Tell me that isn't suspicious. Tell me that isn't exactly what a manipulative spy would do to secure ultimate power. Elder Cashin's hand shook as he held up a document covered in dark, sprawling script. This bears Aldrich Frostpaw's blood seal. The magic in these words. He swallowed hard. If what she says is true, if this girl activates the inheritance curse, she won't just claim territories. She'll become everything her father was. Everything we fought to destroy. She's done nothing wrong, Kale snarled, moving to Saren's other side. You're condemning her for crimes she hasn't committed, for a curse she never asked for. The curse exists whether she asked for it or not. Elder Morrigan stood, her gray robes rustling like grave shrouds. We cannot risk another Frostpaw. We cannot risk that power falling into anyone's hands. Her ancient eyes settled on Saren with something that might have been pity. I'm sorry, child. But some threats are too great to show mercy. The vote was swift and brutal. 7 hands raised in agreement. 2 abstained. None opposed. Saren Frostpaw. Elder Cashin's voice echoed through the chamber, final as a death knell. You are hereby sentenced to execution by silver blade at dawn. May the gods show you more mercy than your father showed his victims. The bond exploded with fury and denial. Dorian's roar shook the columns. Kale shifted halfway, his wolf rising with savage desperation. Riker's hand went to the blade at his hip. But the royal guard moved faster, surrounding them, hands on weapons, a silent warning that even kings could not break council law. Saren felt the cold bite of silver chains close around her wrists. She met Lysandra's eyes across the chamber and saw triumph there, cold, calculated, absolute. Take her to the cells, Elder Cashin commanded. And may the dawn come swiftly. The dungeon cells beneath Shadowspire Palace were carved from stone so old it predated the kingdom itself. Saren sat on the frozen floor, silver chains burning against her wrists, counting the hours until dawn. The guards had taken everything, her borrowed tunic replaced with execution whites, her shoes, her dignity. But they'd missed the hairpin tucked into the twist of her dark hair, the one Kale had given her that morning in what felt like another lifetime. Her fingers trembled as she worked the pin free, bending it with practiced precision. 16 years of invisible servitude had taught her how to open locked doors, how to move through spaces she wasn't meant to enter. The silver chains were harder. Each touch against the metal burned like acid, but pain was familiar. Pain was survivable. The lock clicked open with a sound like breaking bone. Saren unwound the chains slowly, biting back whimpers as the silver left angry welts across her skin. The cell door opened silently, and she stepped into the narrow corridor, bare feet silent on damp stone. The guards would change shift soon. She had minutes, maybe less. A hand shot out from the darkness and yanked her into an adjacent cell. Saren's scream died in her throat as a scarred palm clamped over her mouth. Her captor was massive, broad-shouldered and battle-worn, with a face marked by claw scars that ran from temple to jaw. His eyes were pale gray, almost colorless, and they studied her with unsettling intensity. "Don't scream," he growled, his voice like gravel. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because someone needs to tell you the truth before you die for nothing." He released her slowly and Saren stumbled back against the cell wall. "Who are you?" "Theron. Rogue. Tracker. Former member of Aldrich Frostpaw's inner circle before I realized what kind of monster I was serving." He settled onto the stone bench, his chains rattling. I've been rotting in this cell for 3 years, waiting for the council to decide if I'm worth executing or just letting starve. But tonight when they dragged the tyrant's daughter past my cell, his pale eyes glittered. I knew the clock had finally run out. I don't understand. The documents Lysandra showed the council? They're real. But they're not the whole truth. Theron leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Your father didn't create an inheritance curse. He created something far worse. A soul chain binding. And it doesn't activate when you seduce someone or claim power. It activates after exactly 16 years of servitude. The blood drained from Saren's face. 16 years. Of invisible service. Of suppressing your true nature. Of paying the price in pain and silence. Theron's smile was bitter. Your father was brilliant in his cruelty. He knew they'd hunt you if you showed power, so he designed a curse that required you to hide. Every year you stayed invisible, the soul chain grew stronger, binding your Omega power deeper, compressing it like a coiled spring. And when the seal breaks? Saren's voice was hollow. Whoever claims you first, whoever forces a mate bond before anyone else, doesn't just get your father's territories. They absorb your accumulated power. 16 years of suppressed Omega strength, all transferred in a single claiming. Theron's expression darkened. You'll become the ultimate prize. Every alpha in the realm will hunt you, fight for you, kill for the chance to absorb that power and become unstoppable. Saren's legs gave out. She slid down the wall, her mind reeling. When does the seal break? Midnight. Tonight. The moment your 16th year of service is complete. Theron's chains rattled as he stood. Which means you have less than 8 hours before every alpha with ambition knows exactly where you are and exactly what you're worth. The execution was never going to happen. Lysandra doesn't want you dead. She wants you claimed by someone she controls, someone who'll share the power once they absorb it. His scarred face twisted with disgust. She's probably already brokered a deal with a rival king. The execution was theater. Get you alone, vulnerable, then arrange a convenient escape, where her buyer claims you before anyone realizes what's happening. Saren's hands clenched into fists, her nails biting into her palms. How do I stop it? You can't stop the seal from breaking. But you can destroy the binding document before it's activated. It's kept in your father's old compound, the Frostpool ruins north of here. Theron moved to the cell door, testing the lock with surprising gentleness. You'll need to move fast. And you'll need to stay unclaimed until you reach it. The kings will try to protect you. Might even try to claim you themselves to keep you from worse fates. But once that seal breaks, Saren, you won't be a person anymore. You'll be a weapon. And everyone will want to pull the trigger. The Frostpool ruins rose from the northern wasteland like broken teeth, shattered towers and collapsed walls overgrown with thorned vines that seemed to writhe in the moonlight. Saren stood at the edge of what had once been her childhood home, and every instinct screamed at her to run. The air itself felt wrong here, thick with residual dark magic and the memory of blood. The crypt entrance is beneath the main hall, Theron said beside her, his pale eyes scanning the ruins with tactical precision. Your father kept his most valuable documents in a vault protected by blood wards. You'll need to cut your palm to open it. They moved through the wreckage in silence, stepping over rubble and bones that Saren refused to examine too closely. The main hall was a skeleton of its former grandeur. The ceiling opened to the sky, the floor cracked and sprouting twisted vegetation. In the center, half hidden beneath fallen stones, was a stone staircase descending into darkness. Saren's wolf whimpered in recognition and terror. She'd been down those stairs before. Had heard screams echoing up from the depths while her father worked his blood magic in the crypt below. Stay close, Theron murmured, producing a torch from his pack and lighting it with a striker. The flame cast dancing shadows that made the ruins feel alive, watchful. The stairs spiraled down for what felt like miles, the air growing colder with each step. Ancient runes glowed faintly along the walls, wards designed to keep intruders out and something else in. At the bottom, a heavy iron door stood sealed, its surface covered in rusted symbols that pulsed with dying magic. Saren pressed her palm against the door's center. The runes flared bright red and she gasped as they bit into her skin, tasting her blood, confirming her lineage. The door groaned open, revealing a circular chamber lit by ethereal blue flames that burned without heat or fuel. In the center of the crypt, surrounded by a ring of blackened bones, sat an ancient woman. She was more corpse than living thing, skin stretched tight over skull, eyes filmed with cataracts, gray hair hanging in brittle strands. But when those milky eyes fixed on Saren, they burned with terrible awareness. Aldrich's daughter. The witch's voice was dust and decay. Finally come home. Theron's hand went to the blade at his hip, but the witch laughed, a sound like cracking ice. I can't harm you, rogue. I can barely hold this wretched form together. I'm bound here as guardian of the soul chain, cursed to watch over it until it activates or someone destroys it. Her gaze shifted to Saren. I've been waiting 16 years for you to arrive. Waiting for midnight. Where is the binding document? Saren demanded, stepping forward despite her terror. The witch gestured to a stone altar behind her. On it lay a single scroll, its edges blackened with blood magic, pulsing in rhythm with Saren's own heartbeat. Take it if you wish. Burn it. Tear it apart. The witch's smile was horrifying. It won't matter. The soul chain isn't written on paper, child. It's written in your blood, carved into your very soul the day your father bound you. That document is just a record, a map of what's already been done. Saren's world tilted. Then I can't stop it? The seal will break at midnight whether the document exists or not. Every alpha will feel the pull, will know where you are, will hunt you until one of them claims you and absorbs everything your father built into you. The witch leaned forward, her filmed eyes somehow seeing everything. But here's the secret Aldrich never told anyone, the one I've kept all these years. Whoever claims you doesn't just gain your power. They become a vessel for your father's will. His consciousness, trapped in the curse, will slowly consume whoever absorbs your strength. Within a year, Aldrich Frostpaw will live again through your mate's body. Horror crashed through Saren like ice water. He designed his own resurrection. Through you. Through your bloodline. Through whichever ambitious fool thinks they're gaining power when they're really inviting a monster into their soul. The witch's expression twisted with something that might have been pity. Your father always wins, little wolf. Even from death. Even through you. The torch in Theron's hand flickered. How long until midnight? The witch tilted her head, listening to something only she could hear. 1 hour. Maybe less. Saren grabbed the document from the altar, her hands shaking. If I can't destroy the curse, then I won't let anyone claim me. I'll die first. Noble. The witch's laugh echoed through the crypt. But the seal breaks regardless. And once it does, your scent will call to every alpha for 100 miles. You can run, child. But you cannot hide. Not anymore. They were halfway back through the ruins when midnight struck. Saren felt it first. A sharp, tearing sensation in her chest, as if something that had been locked away for 16 years suddenly shattered. She gasped and stumbled, catching herself against a crumbling wall. The burned scars on her shoulder blazed with white-hot agony, the old runes from the masking spell unraveling in reverse, peeling away the last vestiges of her carefully constructed invisibility. Then the pulse hit. It exploded outward from her body like a shockwave, invisible but undeniable, carrying her scent, her location, her very essence across the kingdom in a single supernatural surge. Saren felt it ripple through the earth, through the air, through the bond that connected all wolves to each other. And she knew with absolute certainty that every alpha within 100 miles had just felt it too. Run. Theron's voice was urgent. He grabbed her arm and hauled her forward, away from the ruins, toward the tree line. They'll come from every direction. We need to. The first howl split the night. Then another. And another. A dozen voices rising in predatory harmony, distant but closing fast. The hunt had begun. They crashed into the whispering woods at a dead sprint, branches tearing at Saren's execution whites, roots threatening to trip her with every step. Behind them the howls grew closer, multiplying, surrounding them. Theron pulled her left, then right, using every tracker's trick he knew to mask their trail. It wasn't enough. 3 wolves materialized from the darkness ahead, rogues with scarred pelts and feral eyes, their jaws dripping with hunger. Theron shifted instantly, his gray wolf placing itself between Saren and the attackers. The fight was brutal and brief. He took down one, drove off another, but the third slipped past him. Saren ran. Her bare feet bled on the forest floor, her lungs burned, but terror gave her speed she didn't know she possessed. The rogue wolf's snarls echoed behind her, getting closer with each heartbeat. She could smell its breath, rotten violence, could feel its presence like death at her heels. A root caught her ankle. She went down hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. The wolf leaped, jaws open, silver eyes gleaming with triumph. A golden blur hit it mid-flight. Kale's wolf was magnificent and terrifying, all leonine power and savage grace. He tore into the rogue with vicious efficiency, his growls shaking the trees. The rogue tried to flee. Kale's jaws found its throat and ended it. Then he shifted back, bloody and breathing hard, his amber eyes wild as they locked on Saren. "You ran from us." His voice was raw, accusatory, devastated. "You were sentenced to die and you ran instead of—" He stopped, chest heaving. "Do you have any idea what that did to us?" "I had to, the curse." "We know about the curse." Riker broke into Lyssandra's chambers and found her real documents. "We know everything." Kale pulled her to her feet, his hands checking her for injuries with desperate thoroughness. "We defied the council. Left our thrones. Risked everything to find you before." A branch snapped nearby. Kale tensed, his body shifting to shield hers. Through the trees, Saren saw movement. More wolves, more hunters closing in from all sides. "Can you ride?" Kale's question was sharp. "What?" A horse burst through the undergrowth, midnight black with a wild mane, saddled and ready. Behind it came two more, bearing Dorian and Riker already mounted and bloodied from their own battles. "The Whispering Woods are crawling with hunters," Dorian said, his storm-gray eyes scanning the darkness. "We need to move. Now." Kale lifted Saren onto his horse in one smooth motion, then swung up behind her. His arms bracketed her body, one hand taking the reins, the other pressing protectively against her stomach. "Hold on to me," he commanded. "And don't let go." They rode hard through the darkness, hoofs pounding against ancient earth, branches whipping past in a blur. Behind them the howls multiplied, a symphony of greed and violence. Ahead, Saren could see nothing but shadows and the promise of more danger. But Kale's arms were solid around her. Dorian and Riker flanked them like guardian wolves, and for the first time since midnight, she let herself believe that survival might be possible. Even if survival meant something she'd never dared imagine. The river crossing appeared suddenly through the trees. A narrow ford where the water ran shallow over smooth stones, reflecting the dying moonlight. Kale pulled his horse to a halt, his body tense against Saren's back as he surveyed the opposite bank. Dorian and Riker flanked them, their mounts breathing hard, ears pinned back in warning. "Something's wrong," Riker said quietly, his dark eyes scanning the tree line. "It's too quiet." The attack came from both sides at once. Wolves burst from the undergrowth. At least a dozen, moving with the coordinated precision of trained warriors. Kale's horse reared and Saren felt herself falling. Strong arms caught her, pulling her down in a controlled descent, but they were separated immediately as the wolves closed in. Kale shifted mid-fall, his golden wolf hitting the ground and launching into the nearest attacker. Dorian and Riker were already fighting, their wolves tearing through enemies with brutal efficiency. But there were too many and they kept coming. "Hello, Saren." Lysandra stepped from the shadows on the opposite bank, her healer's robes traded for dark leather armor. Beside her stood a massive figure, easily 7 feet tall, with silver-streaked black hair and eyes like chips of ice. His scent rolled across the water, heavy with age and power and cruelty. "Alpha King Morrigan of the Northern Wastes. I believe you have something that belongs to my new ally." Morrigan's voice was deep, cultured, utterly devoid of mercy. "A rather valuable prize that's been promised to me in exchange for my assistance in certain political matters." Saren backed toward the water, her bare feet slipping on wet stones. "I'm not anyone's prize." "That's where you're wrong, child." Lysandra's smile was poison-sweet as she waded into the ford. In her hand she held a small glass vial filled with amber liquid. "You've always been a prize. Your father made sure of that. The only question was who would be smart enough to claim you first." She moved faster than Saren expected. Healer's grace transformed into Predator's speed. Her hand closed around Saren's wrist and she pressed the vial against her lips. Saren tried to twist away, but Lysandra's grip was iron-strong, enhanced by some unnatural magic. The liquid burned down Saren's throat. Her legs gave out instantly. The paralytic poison spread through her veins like ice, stealing control of her limbs, her voice, everything except her racing mind and her ability to feel. She collapsed into the shallow water, unable to move, unable to scream, as Lysandra dragged her onto the opposite bank. Saren. Cale's roar was anguished, but he was pinned down by 3 massive wolves, their combined weight keeping him from reaching her. Morrigan knelt beside her paralyzed form, his cold eyes assessing. Perfect. The soul chain is already active. I can feel it thrumming beneath her skin. All that compressed power just waiting to be claimed. His hand settled on her throat, and Saren felt the claiming ritual beginning. Ancient words in a language that predated kingdoms, magic that would forge an irreversible bond. Her wolf howled silently, trapped and helpless. The bond with the 3 kings screamed in agony, fighting against the foreign claim trying to override it. But Morrigan's power was immense, centuries old, and the ritual was designed to be unstoppable once begun. Stop this. Dorian's voice cut through the chaos. He stood at the water's edge in human form, bloodied and breathing hard, his storm-gray eyes blazing with barely contained fury. Behind him the forest had gone still. The attacking wolves had retreated, and through the trees, Saren could see movement, warriors in royal colors at least 30 strong. Riker emerged from the opposite side, his own forces spreading out to surround the clearing. Release her, Morrigan. This ends now. The Northern Waste King smiled, his hand still pressed to Saren's throat. But I've only just begun. Another 30 seconds and the bond will be complete. Your mate will become mine and all that Frostpaw power. His expression shifted to something hungry and triumphant. Will make me unstoppable. You'll be dead, Cale snarled, shifting back to human form. Blood ran from a gash on his temple, and his amber eyes burned with feral promise. Before you complete that ritual, I will rip out your throat. You'll try. Morrigan's grip tightened. But you'll fail. Because you're too noble, too concerned with honor and law. I'm not. He looked at Lysandra. Kill them if they move. I need 20 more seconds. Lysandra raised her hands, dark magic crackling between her fingers. Power no healer should possess. Saren realized with horror that the woman had been planning this for years, gathering forbidden magic, waiting for this exact moment. The claiming ritual intensified. Saren felt Morrigan's will pressing against hers, felt her father's curse responding, felt the soul chain beginning to transfer. Then the 3 kings looked at each other. Something passed between them, a decision made without words, a choice that broke every law they'd ever sworn to uphold. They moved as one. Dorian reached Saren first, his hand closing over Morrigan's wrist with bone-crushing force. You want to claim what's ours? Then understand what you're fighting. Cale hit Morrigan from the side, driving him away from Saren's paralyzed body. Riker was already there, kneeling beside her, his dark eyes meeting hers with absolute certainty. This is going to break every law, Riker said quietly, his hand settling over her heart. Every tradition. Every rule that's governed our kind for 1,000 years. But we don't care. Cale appeared on her other side, bloodied and fierce, his hand finding hers. We choose you over thrones. Dorian knelt at her head, his fingers threading through her hair with unexpected gentleness. We choose you over everything. Then they spoke in unison, their voices blending into something that resonated with ancient power, words in the old tongue that hadn't been spoken since the kingdom's founding. The Triple King's Bond. A ritual so forbidden it had been struck from every text, banned by every council, because the power it created was too great for any kingdom to control. 3 alphas. 1 mate. 1 unbreakable claim. The world exploded with light. Saren felt their bond slam into her simultaneously, not 1 claiming but 3, braided together into something exponentially stronger than the sum of its parts. Dorian's steady strength, Cale's fierce protectiveness, Riker's calculated devotion, all pouring into her at once. The mate bond didn't just form. It detonated, tearing through Morrigan's incomplete claim like it was paper, shredding the soul chain curse that had been woven into her soul for 16 years. The curse fought back. She felt her father's will rising from the dark magic, felt Aldrich Frostpaw's consciousness trying to take root, trying to possess whoever had claimed her. But there wasn't one claimant. there were three, and their combined strength created something the curse couldn't comprehend, couldn't consume. The soul chain shattered. The release was cataclysmic. 16 years of compressed Omega power erupted outward in a blinding wave that sent Morrigan flying backward, that made Lysandra scream and shield her eyes. The dark magic that had been twisted into a weapon transformed, purified by the triple bond into pure radiant strength. Saren felt the paralytic poison burn away. Felt her body respond to her will again. Felt power flooding through her veins, not her father's corrupted legacy but something entirely her own. She rose to her feet between the three kings and the ground trembled. Her wolf surged to the surface, no longer cowering, no longer hidden. Her scent rolled across the clearing, Omega and powerful and utterly unafraid. The burned scars on her shoulder blazed with silver light, transforming from marks of pain into symbols of survival. Morrigan staggered upright, his face twisted with fury and disbelief. Impossible. The curse should have. Your curse is broken. Saren's voice rang with authority she'd never possessed before. Your claim is rejected. And if you ever threaten what's mine again, you won't face three kings. You'll face their queen. The words hung in the air like a declaration of war. Lysandra tried to run. Riker's warriors were faster, surrounding her, binding her with silver chains. Morrigan's forces melted back into the trees, abandoning their king to face the consequences of his ambition alone. The council will never accept this, Morrigan spat, backing toward the tree line. A triple king's bond is forbidden. You've destroyed yourselves for a girl who is worth more than every throne in this realm combined. Dorian's voice was absolute. He moved to Saren's side, his hand settling possessively on her waist. Tell the council. Tell every alpha who hunted her tonight. Tell them all that Saren Frostpaw is claimed, bonded, and protected by three kings who will burn this kingdom to ash before we let anyone take her. Kale flanked her other side, his amber eyes blazing. And if they want war over it, we'll give them war. Riker stepped behind her, his presence solid and unshakable. But they won't win. Morrigan looked at them, at the three alpha kings who'd abandoned everything for one woman, at Saren standing between them radiating power that rivaled their own, and for the first time in his ancient life he felt fear. He fled. The clearing fell silent except for the gentle rush of the river and the sound of 4 heartbeats synchronizing into one rhythm. Saren turned to face the kings who'd chosen her, who'd broken every law to save her, who'd transformed a curse into a crown. What happens now? She whispered. Dorian's smile was fierce and proud. Now you stop hiding. Kale's hand cupped her face. Now you stop running. Riker's arms wrapped around her from behind. Now you rule beside us. The bond pulsed between them, complete, unbreakable, forbidden and perfect. Saren Frostpaw, who'd spent 16 years as a shadow, looked at the three alpha kings who'd made her their equal and finally let herself be seen. Not as her father's weapon. Not as a curse or a prize. But as exactly what she'd always been meant to be. A queen who'd survived hell and emerged stronger for it, standing beside three kings who'd chosen love over law and her over everything else. The hunt was over. Her reign had just begun.